The time has finally come. What's up everybody, I'm Kirk, and today we are smashing our way into Doom Eternal: The Ancient Gods Part 2 to see if this DLC keeps Doom eternal. But before all that, please remember to subscribe and ring that bell for more videos full of ridiculous montages. Alrighty, gas up the chainsaw, pack the shells, and let's get ready to rip and tear. As the name implies, The Ancient Gods Part 2 is the second and final chapter of Doom Eternal's story DLC, with us joining the Slayer on his interdimensional hitchhike to Hell's capital city, on a mission to defeat the big bad Dark Lord, a bad guy that really needs to get that pink eye checked out. Like The Ancient Gods Part 1, this DLC includes 3 new levels, 4 if you count the final boss, and while it doesn't add much in terms of new enemies or weapons, it does add some new twists and challenges to the formula that are interesting, to say the least.
My son's curse has been lifted, and I atone for my sins.
The first thing we need to cover is the hammer, as it's the main focal point of this DLC. The Sentinel Hammer is the new special weapon that replaces the Crucible. When activated, the Slayer jumps into the air and slams the hammer down on the ground, splattering lesser demons, dazing the greater ones, and giving you all sorts of goody ammo drops. But it also provides an additional advantage against the real malicious foes. For example, after stunning a Marauder, a quick hammer slam will extend the amount of time you have to inflict damage. It doesn't daze the spirit-possessed demons though. I tried, so you don't have to. And it doesn't really work around trees. Overall, it's a fun new tool in the toolbox. However, there are a few things I need to pick at when it comes to this thing. The first being that id might have been a little too generous with this one. To use the hammer, it has to be charged up. One way is by collecting a power-up for it. The others are by hitting enemy weak points or performing glory kills, aka the two things competent Eternal players do the most. In fact, it only takes 2 glory kills to charge the hammer. Therefore, you're probably going to be using it a lot. And since it can immediately shift the advantage to your favor in even the toughest fights, it takes a bite out of Eternal's overall challenge. We need some balancing here. I feel like we either need to eliminate some of these charge methods or increase the cost to them. For example, instead of needing 2 glory kills, maybe you need 4 or 5. My vote is to strictly have it charged through pickups. However, if it's one thing I acutely don't like about it, it's the goofy sound it makes when you daze the demons, with cartoonish stars swirling over their heads. I found it really distracting and it pulled me right out of the game. I could see an argument for keeping the stars. I suppose they do serve a purpose, letting you know when a monster is dazed, not like the body language is enough, but I just found the noise to be too much. They also applied this to when you staggered the Marauders, which is totally unnecessary. I know when a Marauder is staggered. I don't need the game to go all Looney Tunes to reinforce it. Worst of all, there's no option to turn this off, something id needs to patch in ASAP. Difficulty, or lack of it, was the biggest surprise for me in this DLC. Doom Eternal is one of the hardest shooters I've ever played, which I loved, because it was a fair difficulty that pushed me to be a more skilled player. Ancient Gods Part 1 upped the ante, providing an even greater challenge that tested my modest skills even further. So for Ancient Gods Part 2, I was anticipating to have my ass handed to me, but believe it or not, the experience wasn't nearly as difficult as I expected or hoped for. In fact, where Ancient Gods Part 1 was a grueling marathon, Part 2 was like a brisk jog with a few uphill parts. It's still a greater challenge than the base campaign, and there were certainly parts that were insane and gave me some trouble, but in general, it looks like id reined it back on this one, which I think is a bit of a shame. Some of this is inherently from the new features added to the game, like the hammer, but it does appear id made some adjustments and nerfs to some of the more difficult enemies introduced in Ancient Gods Part 1, and even went as far as to tone down some of the tougher fights in that DLC as well. This isn't a bad thing necessarily, nothing wrong with tweaking the balance of your game, but it does feel like an overcorrection, like they were a little too influenced by the negative reaction to the difficulty of Part 1. To be fair, the most difficult portions of this DLC have been made optional through through the escalation challenges. Escalations replace the Slayer gates and are similar to the gore nests from Doom 2016. You know the drill, pull out the gross demon sack and fight a mob of enemies. Escalations are a 2-fight deal. The first is mandatory and rewards the player with an upgrade to their hammer, because apparently the super weapon needs to be more super. The second, however, is optional and rewards a cosmetic upon completion. And yeah, these are the fights that will test your sanity. I dig the concept, and I like that there is a clear and immediate reward for taking on the optional battle, but I'm not at all confident these will satisfy the hardcore doomers out there. Next to the hammer, the other big thing this DLC introduces are the new demon variations, which are quite interesting. The first of these are encountered early on in the first level, the Screecher zombies. If these purple carcasses are shot, they'll buff the demons around them, making them faster and take less damage. So you have to exercise more caution around these guys. Next, you'll come across the Armored Barons. Pretty much identical to your standard Barons, however, the armor on these big boys protects them from damage, and the quickest way to blast that armor off is by hitting it with a plasma rifle or shooting the weak point on his fist when it flashes green. But when you do get the armor off, you only have a limited window to damage him before it regenerates, which can be extended if you hit him with the hammer. Ho ho ho! Stone Imps are resistant to most weapons, but are weak against the full auto attachment for the shotgun, and they can be smashed by the hammer. Next, we have Riot Soldiers, who have shields that are totally invulnerable to all damage, and the only way to kill these guys is to damage them from behind, like with a rocket's splash damage. Finally, we have Cursed Prowlers. When they hit you with their poison, you lose the ability to dash, and your health and armor will slowly drain away. The only way to snap out of it is to blood punch the Prowlers themselves, making for a demonic version of tag. Initially, I was positive about the monster variations. I like that they pushed me out of my comfort zone and made me use different tactics, but as I played further, my feelings started to become more and more mixed. While these new variations do provide more variety, I ultimately didn't feel like they added all that much to the game. First of all, some of these I do like, and wouldn't mind seeing in future games. For starters, the Stone Imps. I like that they were weak to a specific weapon mod. I think that's a fitting way to challenge players in this game, and they have a unique attack where they curl up in a ball and launch at you, making groups of them a unique and dangerous challenge. Screechers were the other ones I dug. I like the added risk they present in a battle, pushing me to think more about what I'm doing and where I'm shooting. But then the Armored Baron is just a Baron that takes a little more time to kill. I didn't feel like they were a greater challenge compared to the normal Barons. Same with the Riot Soldiers. While they take a little extra thought to kill, once again, these guys don't really provide a greater challenge compared to the normal shield guys. But the worst of them are the Cursed Prowlers, who can go straight back to hell. Doom Eternal has made me feel a lot of emotions. Joy, sadness, rage. But with the Cursed Prowlers, I felt a new emotion. Annoyance. Well, okay, the tentacles annoyed me too, but I usually play that up for jokes. These assholes are straight up irritating. Like I said, when they hit you with their poison, your health begins to drain and you lose the ability to dash. But at the same time, your whole screen washes over in this flat green color, making the environment and enemies harder to see. And the only thing highlighted is the Prowler himself, who is running and teleporting all over the place. And as you'll be in these cramped, demon-infested arenas, it's more likely you'll get killed just trying to hunt them down. And God help you if your blood punch isn't charged, because you're probably gonna die. To me, getting hit by Prowler poison was comparable to being hit by the blue shell in Mario Kart. Just this out-of-nowhere thing designed to destroy your momentum in one fell swoop. Like I said, it's annoying. But here's the thing. While this Prowler does have a doozy of an attack, it's still a Prowler. Just as easy to kill as the normal ones, and once you know they spawn in a battle, you'll likely go after them first just to get them out of the way. So once again, while I like a few of these variations, I don't feel like they added all that much to the game. If anything, what they succeeded at was distracting and slowing me down. I mean, let's compare them to the spirits that were introduced in part 1. The buffs they gave to demons was a dangerous thing to contend with, and really kept you on your toes, not to mention making sure you cleared out enough of the other demons so you were able to successfully ghost bust them. Spirits added a good dimension of challenge to Doom skirmishes, whereas these guys, at best, are making me switch up tactics, and at worst, are just hokey speed bumps. Next, let's talk about the levels. First up, we have the World Spear, which is one of the most unusual looking Doom levels, characterized by lush green forests and bright blue skies. It's pretty. And I dig it. As much as I like the fire, brimstone, and carnage of other Eternal levels, it's a nice change of pace to play in an environment with this much beauty. And it's cool to see more of Argent Noor and get more of a sense of what the civilization was like before it all went to hell. Oh look, the giant tentacles are back. Woo. Next up is Reclaimed Earth, which gives us a glimpse at Earth post-demonic invasion, with the planet healing and nature coming back with a vengeance. And then third, we have Amora, the capital city of Hell, where the final battle between good and evil will take place. Oh, real quick, before I forget to mention it, there's now a new platforming challenge in the form of meat hook grapple points, where you can attach the meat hook of your super shotgun and swing like your Tarzan. These are fine. Personally, I think these launch you a little too fast, or I don't know, maybe I just suck at them. But they do add some nice flavor to the platforming, which I've always been indifferent about. In fact, I'm a little surprised these weren't in the base game. So, what did I think of these levels? Well, I'm bummed to say I thought they were underwhelming and uninspired. The first level is my favorite of the bunch. I don't have much to pick on there other than having to fight in a poison dome full of purple goo, which if you need reminding, slows your movement down to a crawl. In general, big comeback for purple goo in this DLC. Can't say I was happy about it. The second level, Reclaimed Earth, is probably the most forgettable level in all of Doom Eternal. I dig the concept here, and visually it's well executed, but I just feel like I've seen this level in a bunch of other games. Nothing feels special about it. If you had told me this was in Destiny or Halo, I'd probably say, yeah, looks about right. I feel like it was lacking that Doom twist to it. Plus, the mission is on the short side, which was glaring to me considering how big these DLC levels have been. Amora just felt like a missed opportunity. Let me set the stage for you here. This is, up to now, the final Battle of Doom. Not only the finale of Doom Eternal, but also the finale of the Doomslayer saga that started with Doom 2016. Yeah, a lot of weight here. The mechanized forces of good and the evil hordes of hell are about to do battle. Epicness is upon us. And so what does the final level of Doom do? It has you fight in these narrow, awkwardly uphill stone arenas that might as well belong to any alien planet, they look so generic. Which eventually leads you into the Hell City itself, which is more interesting to look at, but let's be honest, this is just Maker architecture spray painted a monotonous crimson. I mean, this is, in my mind, the center of all evil in the universe, and it just doesn't look or feel like it. I mean, when I imagine the capital city of hell, I imagine something like Necrovol times 50, not a palette swap of Urdak. Also, when you reach the inside of the city, there are these new demonic trooper enemies, which are basically fodder that can shoot you. You can kill these dudes in one shot, and I don't know, they just felt like a silly inclusion to me. I mean, wouldn't the troopers guarding the capital of hell be more of a challenge? One thing I did like seeing was the battle rage around me, which was genuinely cool. But if I had to be more picky, I wish this battle was incorporated into the gameplay somehow. I'm not saying it needed to be some cinematic roller coaster like in a COD game, but something at least to make the finale of Doom Eternal feel more special. Like, what if we got to jump on top of one of those mechs and fight demons on it? Or platform and meat hook in the midst of a raging firefight? Anything to make me feel a part of this awesome battle waging around me. I want to touch on the combat arenas too. While there are open battlefields to fight in, majority of Part 2's combat arenas are surprisingly compact. Narrow walkways intertwined with each other with lots of jump pads to help you maneuver. They often reminded me of the deathmatch maps from the arena shooters of old. That's not unusual. This era of Doom is characterized by its deathmatch style arenas. I've just never seen it so blatant. With smaller areas to battle in and many angles for the many demons to come at you, combat often feels cramped and unrelenting, and I suspect this map design is meant to encourage the use of the hammer. It does make for some fun fights, however, it also makes up the majority of the fights in the DLC. I feel like there was a lack of variety in the combat encounters, especially when compared to the Ancient Gods Part 1, which had many different styles of arenas in various sizes. For me, the cramped combat encounters got a little old. And frankly, I like fighting in more open areas where I can maneuver. Combat is still fun, but I couldn't help but feel like id was maybe going through the motions on this one. Okay, so before we wrap up, I am going to give my thoughts on the final boss and ending, which of course means there will be heavy spoilers after this point. So if you don't want this ending spoiled, I highly recommend going to this time code. I'll give you a few seconds. So the final boss made me chuckle at first because it's essentially a glorified Marauder fight, which for those who still complain about this enemy, I can only imagine them reaching this battle and going, "No!" This fight is all about moving and timing, dodging the Dark One's attacks and waiting for him to flash green so you can start dishing out some doomage. And unsurprisingly, you can stun him further with your hammer. What makes this fight sinister though is that if the Dark One lands a hit on you, he will absorb some of your health, making for an intense tug of war. It's a decent fight that got my heart pumping a few times, but as is with the rest of the DLC, it leans on the easy side. The Dark One's tells are big, bright, and obvious, and once you get a hang of his attack patterns, it's not hard to avoid his advances. There's a ton of ways to keep that hammer charged, whether it be fodder or the red specter demons that drop pickups for it, and while at first I used weapon combos on him in a dazed state, I eventually found the chain gun was all I really needed. When I finally defeated him, I thought to myself, that was cool, but why was that the final boss? Don't get me wrong, having a duel against Satan in power armor is a fitting way to go out, and it could be seen as a little bit of a callback to Hitler in power armor in Wolfenstein 3D. What I mean though is, this is how we're going out gameplay-wise? A bloated Marauder fight where the dash and hammer will win the day? Right. Remember the final boss of Ancient Gods Part 1? It was an absolutely brutal fight that not a lot of people were fans of, but what I appreciated is that it tested just about every bit of your Doom combat skill. I mean, you needed precision, mobility, you had to deal with demon spawns that were buffed by spirits, all the while dealing with the area transforming around you. It was a highly difficult summary of all of Doom Eternal's gameplay, and you know what? That would have made way more sense as the final boss fight of Part 2. Not some gimmicky thing that, yes, while it has its moments, requires really only a couple of your tactics to beat. On the whole, I kind of feel like these two DLC chapters should have been flip-flopped. I feel like the design and difficulty of Part 2 would have made way more sense as Part 1 and vice versa. And the ending is... ending. With the Dark Lord defeated, all of his creations outside of Hell are destroyed. This also includes the Slayer, who begins to weaken and crumble, leading the Makers to place him back in his sarcophagus. And that's the ending. Definitely more of a whimper than a bang here. While underwhelming, the ending isn't all that bad. The Slayer gives a rare, stirring, emotional monologue that I felt really defined who he was as a character.
Have you nothing to say to your creator? No.
Okay, jokes aside, I can't think of a more perfect thing for this man to say to a dying god. I do like how it bookmarks with the beginning of Doom 2016, but, you know, I think I like this ending better when Bungie did it with Halo 3. Ah yes, put the hero to sleep until we need him for the sequel. To be fair, endings are hard, but as is the case with this DLC, I think we could have done a little better here. I wasn't expecting this chapter of Doom to close on a low note, but here we are. Look, I still enjoyed my time with this DLC. Doom Eternal's gameplay is as fun as ever, but yeah, it was a disappointment for me. While some of the new enemy variations are interesting, they failed to add a whole lot to the experience. The hammer, while fun, took some teeth out of the difficulty, and the level design was some of my least favorite of all of Eternal, not to mention the underwhelming finale. And while this DLC hardly tarnishes my opinion of Doom Eternal, or this id Software team who has done an outstanding job with this franchise, it's clear that it's time for them to put this one down and move on to something else. Get those Doom batteries recharged for the Slayer's eventual return. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe, like, and ring the bell so you're notified for all future videos. And be sure to join the Kirk Collects Discord linked in the description below. Curious about my other Doom content? Be sure to check out my playlist here. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.